Hi there, my name is Kim and these are the Wayrider Chronicles, an alternative look at current affairs. Hi there everybody, today we're going nuclear, but from a slightly different angle. Let's start with the world population. Currently the world population is just over 8.1 billion. But within those 8.1 billion, Asia, we're not talking about China, we're talking about other Asia. India and Indonesia, India with 1.4 billion and Indonesia with 300 million, plus Pakistan with 250 million, they account for a large percentage of what economists call the emerging markets. Africa is also having a population boom, with 500 million people in just 3 countries alone: Nigeria, Congo and Ethiopia. So basically what I call these so-called poor countries have people who need to eat. Well, obviously everybody needs to eat. Only all this eating by these people is done very inefficiently. Why? Eating involves cooking, which in turn means heating, which in turn, going further, means energy consumption. Even, for example, in a basically vegetarian diet country like India, anybody's ever been to India, really eat meat. You eat vegetarian food, it's very nice, but it has to be cooked. Why do I call this cooking inefficient? Because the vast majority of these emerging countries in Southeast Asia and Africa, the cooking involves wood burning and or charcoal, which is essentially more wood basically. So where does it come from? Trees. More carbon for the global warming. What would make it better? So all these people start using not gas, because according to most current scenarios, gas actually contributes to global warming, but we won't go into that subject. What everybody would like them to do would be to use electricity produced by renewable energy. However, big problem. That energy in those countries comes from power stations, not from renewable energy. For example, in India, 75% of power is generated by, guess what? Coal. This drives coal experts, for example, from a country like Australia, all the time. The Port of Newcastle, which is the coal port of Australia, has, well, I'll just give you an example. One time I was flying from Sydney to Brisbane, and normally the flights go inland. This one went over the top of the port of Newcastle, which is halfway up the coast of New South Wales. There were 19, I counted 19 vessels waiting in the roads, as it's called, which means they're waiting to go into the port to load, which means that they're all backed up. Huge demand for coal. Most of it's going to India and China to power energy consumption in the form of electricity for, amongst other things, many of these billions of people to eat. Can't stop eating. It's just the way it is. Need to talk about a transition to renewable energy. However, there's another issue with renewable energy. Renewable energy, for all purposes, is, at the moment, wind power and solar power. There are other minor renewable energies, but there's wave power, but the main ones are wind power and solar power. They are inherently very inefficient as sources of energy, for the simple reason that wind stops blowing sometimes, and sometimes it's not sunny. Inefficient also as far as the grid is concerned, something that a lot of people do not realize and don't talk about, is that renewable energy requires a very efficient grid. What is a grid? The grid is the power cables, power lines that supplies energy or electricity to everybody's homes or factories or buildings. If the grid is not efficient, then there's a lot of power wastage. It's not set up for renewable energy, and there's a whole other transition that has to take place for the existing old-fashioned grids to deal with renewable energy. If you go back out to the third world, don't talk to anybody about you don't need to talk to anybody about the efficiencies of the grid. They all know that it's totally inefficient. You don't believe me? Anybody who's been on holiday to Bali or to, for example, islands in Thailand, you only need to look up as you're walking around to see these spaghetti cables of electricity cables above your head. If you don't look up and see them, you're blind. They are extremely inefficient, and a lot of that is also illegal. So that involves, when you have illegal tapping into the existing electricity supplier's grid, this creates inefficiencies because those cables are not connected properly, there's power losses, etc., etc. It causes losses in power. So for example, you've got a coal-fired factory producing power that should arrive, 100% of that production arrive at the distribution points to go to the houses. It can't. It gets stolen, it disappears, etc., etc. In Africa, it's even worse. There is a expression in South Africa especially, although South Africa, load shedding. Load shedding, what does it mean? It just means that the actual energy supply, the energy supplier, in this case the power stations in South Africa, cannot supply the demand for the increase in population, increase in business. And the increase in business is because of the increase in population, because everybody needs to work, because we all need to make money to eat, etc. It's all part of the whole cycle. They can't supply that because for years corruption has meant that there's been underinvestment in that grid, and that's what happens. No power, so they just cut off the power to different areas of the country on a rolling basis to make sure that the whole system doesn't fall apart. Further north, for example, Harare in Zimbabwe, and not only there but in other African countries, what happens when the power goes out? Anybody has got a power generator. How does the power generator work? On petrol. Where does that come from? You guessed it, non-renewable oil. So we come back to one of the most efficient forms of energy production for these more than 8 billion people on this planet, and that's nuclear power. Oh my God, we can't have nuclear power. Because, why? 3 Mile Island in the United States, Chernobyl in now Ukraine, and Fukushima in Japan. The US, let's take 3 Mile Island. The US nuclear power construction after 3 Mile Island was frozen from 1979 to 2012. So 33 years, no power construction. Chernobyl, what happened? A meltdown of the reactor. Everybody who's got Netflix would watch Chernobyl, they know what it's all about. I don't need to go into all the details. Fukushima was a natural disaster. Tsunami caused the Fukushima power plant to be shut down and leak, basically. Now, we get into a situation whereby everybody, the nuclear power business has a problem. So if we take Chernobyl, it caused a rise in people opposing anything to do with nuclear power. To the state where Germany, for example, decommissioned all of their 33 nuclear power stations. And now, surprise, surprise, they've got a power problem. Unlike France, that still has 56 power generators, in Europe there are 167 nuclear power plants still running, of which 72, in spite of Chernobyl, are in Eastern Europe, 37 are Russian, and 15 are still operating in Ukraine. And Russia and Ukraine are fighting a war, for God's sake. Go figure. And this is where we come to nuclear power's, for want of a better word, image problem. The success of the movie Oppenheimer is all about nuclear bombs. So the nuclear has always been seen has that shadow around it about the bomb. The next shadow, apart from the bomb, which, I mean, the bomb is what it is. We all understand that if there's indiscriminate but bombing of nuclear or dropping of nuclear bombs, that's the end of us. The world will blow up, basically. It's probably a little bit more complicated than that, but it's not good. That's the first image problem of the nuclear power generation business. It's the bomb. The next one is the radiation. And radiation is a special problem because it's invisible. And we can't hide from it. For example, where I live in Switzerland, they have nuclear bomb shelters, which means that down in every basement of every building legally constructed in Switzerland, or there are legally constructed nuclear bomb fallout shelters, which basically mean if there's a nuclear explosion, to go down there, shut everything up, and there's breathing apparatus, etc., etc. So we have this other, besides the bomb, you have this other issue about this insidious radiation that can kill you, although we're not sure how, because radiation sickness, it's one of those sort of like horror story science fiction things. Oh my God, there's this thing that's going to come and get us. We can't escape from it. You have to go into a special room to escape from it and lock yourself away and seal yourself up. Otherwise you're going to die. But you're not going to die straight away when somebody's going to falls down in front of you and dies. No, it's a long-term thing. So it's easy for anybody who opposes that type of or opposes nuclear power to play up on those fears. It's classic horror story. My God, there's this mysterious substance that doesn't kill you straight away, but it will kill you and you can't escape from it. However, it's becoming increasingly obvious to lots of people that without a serious rethink of nuclear power construction, it's going to be virtually impossible to transition to clean energy to reduce these carbon footprints. Remember, these couple of billion people in the third world, as it's like to be called, as it is sometimes called, need to eat. They are not going to go away. They're not going to suddenly all die off and disappear. They're still going to demand to eat. And if the majority of these people eat by burning fossil fuels, we need to arrive at an alternative situation. Renewable energy is great, but there is no way that 1 billion people in India are going to be able to survive or with any time soon on renewables. So there's got to be a balance between reducing the dependence on coal and oil in countries that can do it, i.e. Industrialized Western countries, or what's called Western countries, and allowing the other countries that cannot do that more time to move up to alternative renewable solutions. Without nuclear, it's going to be very hard. See you guys.